Archaeology is a very tangible refutation to the Book of Mormon. The stuff the Book of Mormon claims to have happened here in North America did not happen. Here I talked to the lady who was the author of a statement the Smithsonian put out denying the connection between valid archaeology and the Book of Mormon. Betty Meggers is a professional archaeologist who works for the Smithsonian. She is also the author of a book called Prehistoric America.
Okay.
She's the one you should talk to.
All right. And who's that?
Her name is Betty Meggers. She's real nice.
Okay. Well, good. I don't want to talk to nasty people.
Yeah, well, the short answer to that is no, and physical evidence.
Yeah.
But
I tend to think more in terms of the existence of full-sized horses, silk and steel.
yeah, well, no, there are no objects or anything like that. There's nothing like that that's been identified. I mean, as a total outsider and an archaeologist and someone who's, if there's absolutely no evidence has turned up, and in spite of their concentrated efforts, I mean, and they presumably know where to look and selected the place and have, as I said, sponsored or put in I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars into archaeology and published the reports, and they're it's a great contribution to archaeology, but it didn't turn up anything in support of their ideas.
Yeah.
And as I say, this is an interesting book, but he ends up, I think, near the end, saying, that it's a matter of faith, not science, and I agree. I mean, if you...
Well, I almost think, no, I think it's a matter of science, because if horses were not in this continent, and the book claims they were,
well,
wheels weren't used.
Horses evolved in this continent, and then migrated to the Old World and became extinct in the Americas at the end of the Pleistocene, and then and it's interesting because the Paleo-Indians in the early, in the 12,000 years ago, 10,000 hunted horses. They were still here, and then they became extinct along with mastodons and ground sloths and other Pleistocene fauna.
Yeah.
So there were people here who did see horses, but
not at the time period of the Book of Mormon.
Not when not at that as recently as this. No. It's interesting. I mean, there are a couple of other people like you who have communicated with me and wanting, to have the truth, so to speak, and track it down. But there's no, as I say, even Sorensen in this book of his acknowledges that there is absolutely no physical evidence or material evidence.
Yeah.
They claim that they have told their people not to say the Smithsonian relies on the Book of Mormon as one of our guides to this and that. But there's always some new preacher somewhere who starts spreading the word, and then we get a flood of letters asking if this is true, and then we say no, and then it quiets down for a while. So,
if you as an individual were reading the Book of Mormon, knowing what you know about archaeology, and you saw horses and wheat and wheels and so forth mentioned, would you tend to just discount it right out as religious truth?
No, I mean, if they're talking about the Americas, there's no evidence. I would just say this is, imagination.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, well, that's basically what I wanted to know.
Okay.
I also talked to a Harvard anthropologist named Susan Norris.
New World Archaeological Foundation.
New World Archaeology. Yeah.
Beautiful stuff. Archaeological work they did in the New World to prove the Mormon religion with the lost tribes, I guess it was, coming here, And they put it out, but they eventually stopped them because the archaeologists really weren't supporting the Mormon beliefs, so that ended, but the work was great. Very good stuff.
So they did do the work, but they weren't able to, substantiate their Book of Mormon, basically.
No, right.
Lastly, let me compare here what a Mormon missionary said to me about the similarity of Egyptian pyramids to Central American pyramids compared to what Miss Norris says.
I can tell you that the Egyptian pyramids are very similar to the ones that they find in South America. the design, the structure itself.
But so there's no connection between the pyramids there and the pyramids in Egypt?
No. They're very different structures. Very different construction, very different purpose, architecture, very temporally separated by thousands of years.
And I guess the Egyptian ones are for tombs, basically, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the Mayan ones,
The Mayan ones
were
only sometimes were there burials underneath and tombs underneath, but those were more for ritual and religion and not as monuments to the dead.
Yeah.
So when Mormons claim archaeology supports the Book of Mormon narratives, they are lying.